Wow, this is emotional for me. Uh, so the next morning I get up at like real early and was like really trying to meditate, trying to keep myself calm, but there was just no keeping me calm. I was very scared.
Bufo alvarius, also known as the Colorado river toad, produces a powerful psychoactive substance known as 5-MeO-DMT. It has been referred to as the God molecule and is one of the most potent psychedelics on the planet. Bufo alvarius has been used in traditional shamanic practices for centuries, offering users the opportunity to explore the deepest layers of their consciousness. Known for inducing a rapid and overwhelming state of ego dissolution, Bufo can lead to profound insights, spiritual awakenings, and even a sense of rebirth. However, it's not without its challenges. Users often report confronting intense emotions and experiences, both beautiful and terrifying. On today's episode, I share my terrifying and insane journey of doing Bufo in the Mexican jungle a few hours before an international flight. Please listen with an open mind. While the experiences I had were under the influence of a powerful medicine, that just made them feel all the more real in my body. And with that, welcome to another episode of the Hard for Life podcast.
You are listening to the Hard for Life podcast with Thomas Scott.
Yeah, I'm going to tell the story about when I did Bufo alvarius, which is 5-MeO-DMT. So to start, Bufo alvarius is a toad venom, and it's also known as one of the most intense psychedelics you can take on this entire planet. It's like the Mount Everest of psychedelics. And the entire experience only lasts somewhere between 20 and 45 minutes. But in that experience, it can feel like lifetimes or infinity or lots of different things. And what's really interesting about the 5-MeO-DMT experience is that a lot of people have had very similar experiences on this particular psychedelic, whether that is meeting beings in other dimensions or experiencing God. So they call it the God molecule. And it's not experiencing, from my perspective, it wasn't experiencing God in the way that we think of a religious God, but it's experiencing the true oneness of the entire universe, the true all that is ever pervasive and the underlying fabric of reality and this existence, so to speak. So I feel shy and excited to share this story with you today, and here we go. So this story starts in, when was it? 2020. I had taken a trip to Tulum, Mexico, which is where a lot of my most amazing stories come from. And in Tulum, I was seeking something, but I didn't know what I was seeking. And I was there for about a week. It wasn't my first time in Tulum. And while there, I was doing all sorts of more woo-woo stuff, more woo-woo than I normally would. I had started my path of spiritual awakening probably a year prior, but it was very intellectual. I wasn't embodied in it. I wasn't like experiencing it inside. I was more like conceptualizing what it is like to understand some of these deeper concepts, like the things you can experience in meditation, the things you can experience at a very transcendental level. And I had had spiritual experiences in the past, and I imagine my spiritual journey or spiritual awakening started many years earlier, but it was around this time that I was actively pursuing it I was seeking a deeper truth. So I'm in Tulum, and I have gone to things like, went to like a full moon party on the beach and was staying in hostels and just trying different experiences while there, but still playing in the like removed party boy scene. I was trying to hook up with women. I was trying to find, like, I was drinking a decent amount at that time. And I also was trying to figure out what to do with my business. I had been running my tech company for something like 8 years at this point, and it was doing well, but we had been going through a lot of challenges, especially around legal. I'd been doing a lot of lawsuits. I had like 5 lawsuits at this point within that company. And I was experiencing challenges with my business partnership. We were finding a balance, but we fought often. And it was just very stressful. And I had been doing it for like 8 years, and I was wondering, where's this going? Am I going to actually hit the success that I wanted to hit? And I had an ever-pervasive anxiety that was just staticky in the background at all times. Everything I did, it was just kind of like on edge. And so I'm in Tulum and even on edge there, but I'm leaning in on these full moon ceremonies and following what these shamans are saying to do and all this kind of stuff. And one of them was writing down all of the things I wanted to let go of. And at the time, that was like a brand new idea for me. And I wrote, I wanted to let go of my anxiety and my fear. And by the end of that trip, I had one more night in Tulum before my flight. And I didn't have a place to stay. And so I was on Airbnb checking. And the only thing I could find at the time, because it was actually a very busy time to be in Tulum. In 2020, Tulum had like 2 million tourists or something even bigger than that. But it was a huge amount of tourists there at that time. And so finding a place was tough. And I found this hotel called the Bufo Alvarius Hotel. And at the time, I had no idea what that was. So I booked it and checked in. And when I checked in, the woman at the desk was like, when would you like to schedule your Bufo experience? And at the time, I had no idea what Bufo was. And I said, what is that? And she said, it's 5-MeO DMT. And I essentially had booked a hotel that hosts Bufo experiences at the hotel. That's like their thing. It's called the Bufo Alvarius Sanctuary, actually, not hotel. And so I was like, whoa, I've got a flight tomorrow, first thing in the morning. Can I do Bufo before getting on the flight? And she said yes, which is one of the craziest things. But she was like, yeah, sure, you'll be fine. And so I was like, let me think on it, and I will get back to you and come back to schedule that. So I went for a walk, and right as I was walking down the road in Tulum, if any of you have been walking down Beach Road previous to all the construction they're doing now, there were 3 signs. And I walked past these signs, and the first sign said, if not now. The second sign said then, and the last sign said when. If not now, then when. And I saw that and immediately was like, okay, this is my sign. I need to set this up. So I went back and scheduled the Bufo ceremony for the next morning. And mind you, I had to get on a flight at about 1 p.m. and my Bufo ceremony was at 9 a.m. in Tulum. At the time, I was like, oh, it's going to be easy. And I had also been watching a lot of Joe Rogan podcast, and he was talking a lot about DMT at that time. And so I had been interested in it, excited to do it and try it. And I was also fucking terrified at like 10 out of 10. It was the scariest thing ever. And so all night I'm like super anxious. I knew something big was going to happen. Like my whole reality was going to change and shift, but I went for it anyways. I would call this the leap of faith moment. And the leap of faith really was when I booked it. That was one of the leaps of faith. And with Bufo came many leaps of faith. But this experience, so I got up the next morning and I feel so shy sharing about this experience. It's so personal. It's so personal and it's so intimate and it's so sacred to me. So to share this experience in its most raw form is actually very, I feel scared to do it, genuinely. But I'm going to do it anyways. And we'll see what happens. So, wow, this is emotional for me. So the next morning I get up at like real early and was like really trying to meditate, trying to keep myself calm, but there was just no keeping me calm. I was very, very, very scared. I knew a massive shift was about to come. And I meet the shaman at 9 a.m. and he's a fucking crazy guy. This dude's wild. He calls himself Dr. Alvarius. And he's like a rock star shaman. He like showed up in black combat boots and like striped pants and rolled up in a Dodge Charger. And like just not your typical shaman. He was just like big glasses and everything, but also like a very conscious, loving, aware, holy man. And it was really cool. I was like not expecting that at all. And we go into a teepee and it's me, Dr. Alvarius, and this other man who was there to like just pray and hold space. He was a really beautiful, beautiful soul. And the DMT is actually, the venom is dried on, like when they collect it from the frog, and how they collect it's really important, but I don't need to go into that here. You can look it up. When they collect it from the frog, they put it on a glass plate and let it dry in the sun so it gets very powdery. And they scrape the powder, and that's what they put into a pipe that you smoke. And so he loaded the pipe and asked me to set intentions. And the main intentions I set were to let go of fear and to let go of anxiety. And then he asked if he could say a prayer that I joined in on. And neither of these two gentlemen's English was very good, but I did understand the prayer, which was really beautiful. And we prayed that by the end of this ceremony, I was going to step into my role as a leader of the new earth, that I was going to really support the earth and all of the people on it and all these. It was really potent intentions, like a very conscious prayer. And I said the prayer and then they instructed me to take a 14-second hit off the pipe. And like I said, I'd been watching Joe Rogan, and Joe was like, oh, if you ever do DMT, you need to take 3 hits in order to make sure that the DMT really locks in. So the shamans have you do a 14-second pull so that the DMT really locks in. Well, me being me, I did the 14-second pull, let it out, and then grabbed the pipe and pulled in a second hit again. And both the guys were like, oh, shit. And right when I did, I fell back and I fell into infinity. Like I just kind of like, I experienced my consciousness falling out of my body forever. And that is the start of an absolutely insane experience. Fuck. Okay, I'm gonna keep sharing. So, it's really potent stuff, like what happens in these experiences, especially when you come in contact with something that's so big that your consciousness can't really hold it or understand it. And I had that experience on DMT. I saw my life as I was living it. I saw a future version of my life that could be. And I saw what was holding me back from it. And when I say saw, it's more of a like, I lived it. I lived these different lives in a very fast experience in a very short period of time. And as I did, it started to speed up. And I came into contact with something that was so much bigger than me, it was infinite. And as I did, the pain and the pleasure of it was beyond comprehension. And I had a moment where I remember I was allowed to surrender into it, or I could resist it. And I chose to surrender into it. And as I did, I screamed as hard as I've ever screamed in my entire life. And within the experience that I was having internally, I felt like every single atom of my being was being torn apart and slammed back together in the most painful, blissful, orgasmic, horrendous, terrifying, unfathomable way possible. And it happened an infinite number of times for an infinitely long experience. It was just over and over and over and over and over, like beyond, like just fractally. And externally, my body started to spasm and convulse extremely hard, and I screamed physically. I know that because my vocal cords were completely shredded. Like I couldn't speak for a couple of days. Like my voice hurt to speak for a couple of days after that experience. But I went rolling in the teepee, and on this teepee, we were on a canvas mat that I was laying on, just a little yoga mat basically. And I went rolling and rolled into the gravel that was out on the side of the teepee. And I scooped up a mouthful of that gravel and was like convulsing. So I was chewing the gravel, and I woke up in the middle of this horrendous experience. And the guides were holding me over a trash can, trying to pull the rocks out of my mouth because I was chewing them. They didn't want me to break my teeth. Fuck, this is so intense. I'm like remembering it really strongly. And at that same time, I was experiencing a lot of past lives. And those past lives were ones where I'd gotten my face blown off in war, or I had been smashed by a mace in a gladiator battle, and like my teeth were what I was spitting out. So I'm having this dual reality happen where I'm experiencing the guides trying to get rocks out of my mouth, and also the memories of spitting teeth out my mouth that had been obliterated by like a ballistic metal ball, like a cannonball. It's hard to share this stuff because when you're on that medicine, it's so real. And whether you believe it's past lives or not, that experience, seeing it so vividly in your consciousness, is very potent. Like whether that's a past life or whether it was my experience of the medicine, it was so vivid that it felt very real. And I can still feel it and picture it. And I kind of like half woke up and was asking the shamans what happened, and they don't speak English that well, so we weren't communicating well. But the way I experienced it is I had like died, or I was dying on the DMT, and I like allowed myself to go back, like surrender back in. And at that point, one of the guides put his hand on my chest and started just praying. And I like let myself die all the way. I had this experience of like, what the fuck have I done? I like came to Mexico, did this crazy thing, and that's all my family's going to know of me. It's like, I just went to Mexico and died in a DMT ceremony. That was like the thought going through my head. And it was really painful. I was really sad for it because I could see like I had a moment of like, wow, I fucked up so bad. And I just let it happen. I like let that death wash over me, and I like fell back and went back out. And then I could feel like a beautiful blue pulsing in my throat. And I just like surrendered into that all the way. And I had this really gorgeous experience of like seeing my life and accomplishing everything I ever wanted to. Like getting the woman, at the time I was single, and I had no idea, like I was dying to find my person, but I had no idea what she looked like or anything about her, how to make that happen. Yeah, at the time I didn't have any of the ideas about my woman, but I knew I was going to meet this incredible woman. Like I'd seen her so vividly in this experience of my future life. And I saw how, like I saw all these amazing events. Like one was like I was dancing in all white with a group of people in like a really beautiful place. I was doing an entirely different career than I thought. Like I was not doing Pop Bookings, my tech company, I was experiencing everything I wanted to experience and more. And then there was like an experience of seeing, seeing another path that I was currently on. And it was like really potent. And some really mystical shit happened that I don't know if I'm going to share on this podcast. And I really just blissed out for a long time. And I came to about 45 minutes later and woke up and was like, first thing was like, I was feeling my face to make sure my face was there. And like, I came back and just sat with the guides, and it was a very like very emotional experience. And I had like, when I went rolling in the gravel, my face got all cut up. So I had blood dripping into my eyes. I had like, there was blood on my clothes. My belt had torn off. Like, it was a really fucking intense experience. And so, yeah, there's a lot of fear that like my face had been destroyed, but it wasn't, thankfully. And I left the tent and had about 15 minutes to get to the bus that was going to take me to the airport, because the ceremony had taken longer than I thought it was going to take. So I was still deep in it. Like, yeah, the Bufo only lasted for about 45 minutes for me, but I was fucked up. Like, oh my God, I had just been on the most intense psychedelic ride of my life. And then I needed to get on a bus for 2 hours to get back to the airport. And that was very intense. It was very, very intense. It was not a gentle way to do this type of medicine. I would not recommend that to anybody. But I did it. And my ceremony kept going. As I was on the bus from this to the airport, I was having flashbacks, like thousands of flashbacks. Like, I just kept going back in. Like, the DMT just kept firing. And I got to the airport, went through security, and it was just overwhelming, just exhausting at the most intense degree, because I was in flashback after flashback, and I'm surrounded by all these people, and my mask had just been blown off, and I'm like so vulnerable and so raw, and had just screamed so hard that I couldn't even talk. And it's still fucking wild to me that I did that. But I did. And then I hopped on a flight back to Kansas City. And on the flight up on the plane, I went fully back into the DMT experience and had like an absolute panic attack, like at an enormous degree. And I'm stuck on a flight. And I was like, what the fuck do I do right now? And I just kept surrendering it. And I landed and got to go through customs in the US, which is for me, customs is always an intense experience. It's a very like not friendly, not comfortable. There's always a little fear of like, am I going to get in? Like, what are they going to do? Even though I don't have any reason to not get in, you just don't know. And you can't use your phone. And I've been detained in customs before for dumb shit. Like, one time it was like a complete accident. I was the wrong guy and they detained me. And you are completely helpless. There is no law there the way they do, like search and seizure, all that kind of stuff. No, they just take your shit and they just go through it. They go through your phone. There is nothing protecting you when you're at the border. It's fucking wild. So anyways, that's going through my head as I'm processing still the most intense psychedelic I've ever been on. And I make it through customs. And it was also February at the time. And so in Tulum, I was wearing a t-shirt and shorts the whole time. And then I get back to Kansas City and it was -8 Fahrenheit. And snow like that deep piled onto my car. And I had, I'd left my car in the economy parking there, and I didn't have a heavy coat, gloves, or anything like that. So I got to my car, started it, and then was doing Wim Hof breathing to stay warm because I only had a sweatshirt and that was it. And I'm trying to like wipe the snow off my windshield, and my windshield was completely frozen. My car is freezing cold. And I just got in the car and sat and breathed really deeply. Still the same day that I had done Bufo. And finally my car heated up. Finally I got moving on the road and I got home, and it's crazy to say, but that was just the beginning of my journey with this medicine. And I'll save more of that story for another time, but how does this relate to leaps of faith? First of all, it's just an epic fucking story. Like it's one that I hope illustrates that sometimes I do really stupid shit, but it's also really beneficial and really potent for me, because while that experience was wildly intense, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. It shifted my life out of this dull, monotonous, mundane, stressful, static, anxious place to where I'm at right now, which is living in the most beautiful home I've ever been in my life, with the absolute woman of my dreams, serving men from a place of outrageous purpose. And my leadership is at an all-time high. My inspiration, my creativity, my potency, my wealth, like everything has shifted. But it took a really big, like I was the Titanic going right into an iceberg, and it took this medicine to really steer me like in a 180 direction. I would not have had the courage to go do those things. Like I wouldn't have had the courage to leave my tech company. I wouldn't have had the courage to go down to Tulum and do all this men's work. I wouldn't have had the courage to stand up for myself. And I also wouldn't have had this deep level of faith in God, in life, in the universe, in myself, if I hadn't have had this beautiful, beautiful, painful, potent medicine ceremony. And I think at its core, that's what this is about. That's what these leaps of faith are about. Is it's not, you don't take the leap of faith because it's going to feel good. You take the leap of faith to go do the scariest, hardest, most potent, most challenging thing, because it's going to set your life on an entirely different trajectory. And the faith part is that trajectory is one that's more aligned, better, more fulfilling, more loving, all these types of things. But if your life hasn't been in that path up to this point, it's going to hurt to move it. You're going to have to let parts of yourself die. You're going to have to let old relationships, patterns, memories, attachments, all that's got to go. All that's got to go. And when you do, there is such beauty on the other side. We are living in the Garden of Eden right now. It never left. It didn't go anywhere. It only comes from shifting your perspective on reality. And a perspective shift that I had was that could have been an atrocious, what they call like a bad trip. That was like the definition of a bad trip. And at the same time, it's my best trip I've ever taken. It was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And I'm beyond grateful for it. My heart explodes when I think of how grateful I am for that experience and what I got to see myself do and what I got to see myself in. And doing that has given me the courage to just do way bigger things. And the courage to do way bigger things is what's making my life open up more and more and more and more. And so for that, I bless it all the way. And that's the perspective shift. Is like you're in heaven or hell in this moment right now. The earth is either the most beautiful place or the most hellacious place. And it's just your choice on how you view it. Can you look at everything around you as an absolute gift, as a treasure to behold, as the Garden of Eden itself? And as you do, as we all collectively start to experience this planet as the garden that it is, we get to start to see that manifest in the external world. When you start to see the planet around you as a wildly beautiful garden that is perfect, you want to take care of it. You want to treat it better. You want to treat yourself better. You want to experience it way deeper. It's like, oh man, this is a beautiful garden. What if I ate the food that wasn't tainted by all of these chemicals and various things, but really natural and organic? What if I got to see this view without the oil tanker and the fucking pipes coming up out of the ground? What if I got to have all of the architecture and experiences of the world around me as a facet of the inner beauty that I'm experiencing of myself. And as we all experience that, it will manifest in the world around us. And that is my prayer here for myself, for you, for this whole world, anyone viewing this podcast. So thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Hard for Life podcast. And I can't wait to share more of these stories with you. I got a lot more, and I have a lot more amazing guests coming up. We're just getting started. So I will see you next time on the Hard for Life podcast. Have a great day.